Okay, folks, good afternoon. Welcome to the Entrepreneurship Seminar class. As you are, I'm sure, wondering what all the cameras are about, today's seminar with these three incredible entrepreneurs is being recorded. We're going to eventually push this out via our website and also through the, hopefully, the statewide MSU TV network. So with me today, we have three entrepreneurs. As if you saw any of our marketing materials said, these are three CEOs running companies. All of them are under the age of 29, recent graduates of Mississippi State. And in all cases, they have built companies that have either raised money or in the process of raising companies, valuing them well over, together, $2.5 million, which is really incredible. All of them started these businesses while they were in school, but interestingly enough, their degree is not in anywhere near the space of the markets they're trying to capture. So without further ado, please help me welcome our speaker panels today. I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do and what they studied here at Mississippi State, and we'll start with Mr. Hagen Walker.
So my name is Hagen Walker. I am the CEO of Vibe, which we make glow drinks. They're liquid activated ice cubes that you drop in a drink and they automatically turn on. I studied electrical engineering here at Mississippi State and graduated December of 2015.
My name's Ryan Gilbreck. My company is Metagames. It's a video game development company. I got my degree here in biomedical engineering and then came back and got my MBA. And the MBA is a little bit more relevant to starting a business, but biomed into video games was a bit of a stretch.
So my name is Raul Gopal. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Campus Not Inc. I got my undergrad in aerospace engineering, and then I got my MBA from here as well. Recently just graduated about 2 months ago and currently working full-time as a CEO and co-founder, as I said.
Awesome. Well, Raul, we'll keep going with you and ask the question of entrepreneurship. How did you even get involved with that?
That's a that's a funny story. Well, from the very get-go, if I had to define my life in a word, it's called uncertain. And I'm very comfortable with ambiguity. I always used to break things. I don't like processes and rules and stuff, so I used to find loopholes for all of that. But having said that, in 2012, I did not have any plans to get into entrepreneurship, but our founder, he came across a very legitimate problem of lack of engagement within a classroom and campus setting. And I was like, that's not a problem that you are facing all by yourself. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people. So that's how we got into it, and here we are.
Awesome. So that's a little bit different path than yours, Hagen. So tell them a little bit about how you got into business.
Yeah, I was never expected to be here. So I actually studied electrical engineering, have always enjoyed automotive, and did an internship with General Motors and then followed that up with an internship with Tesla Motors. And it was during that time that my co-founder was actually pitching to the E-Center about this idea that she created in a graphic design class. And she brought me in to help make it liquid activated, so when the ice cube touched water, it would light up. That way you don't have to worry about buttons. It helps servers get these in your drinks faster and things like that. But yeah, I'd never studied anything dealing with entrepreneurship, with business, anything along those lines. And you know, here I am today. I tell people I always studied automotive engineering, and now I make ice cubes, so you never know.
Well, and that's business has been successful, and these have gone all over the world, right?
Yeah, so we've sold over 600,000 of these glow cubes to 35 countries as of last week.
And what's one of the biggest hurdles with selling to 34 countries? 34? Yeah.
Yeah, hoping that your shipping containers don't sink while they're going across the ocean. That's one of the biggest hurdles, I would say, is shipping and logistics, and there's always a language barrier. You know, there's plenty of countries, and there's even more languages. So trying to talk to customers is sometimes a challenge.
Sure.
I'm not against it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a backup plan right now. With bioengineering, I really enjoyed doing research when I was an undergrad, and so I thought that was kind of my plan. But I went and worked in industry because I was like, all right, let me take a step away from being a student, come back, and then I said, all right, well, I've been playing video games my whole life, and I had an idea for a game. My parents said, go for it. I said, what? Huh? Oh, yeah. I'd love to hear it.
So Ryan, your story's a bit unique because you, at least your first degree, entrepreneurship wasn't exactly your goal, right?
No, it definitely wasn't. But two of my friends that I did research with were Benjamin Weed and Ali Borjani. They started Inometrics here, and so kind of through them, they dragged me along to a lot of the Entrepreneurship Center events and gatherings and stuff. So I got kind of a snapshot of what entrepreneurship kind of looks like, and that's where it started to kind of feel real. Like, wow, I know these people, and they're very smart, they're very driven, but they're not doing anything that I couldn't do. It was like suddenly it sort of felt like a possible thing. Like if I could just find an idea, then I could probably do it. And so, like 2 years later, 3 years later, found an idea and I did it.
So that point of, I know a lot of the students come in the center, the E-Center, of course all you guys have been involved heavily in that, and the idea of, what is it going to take to make that actual leap of faith and say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to turn down a lot of money from a lot of other jobs that I could take, and this is going to be my thing, and I'm going to wake up and hope that we sell enough product to pay myself. So Hagen, you want to start us off, and I'll come to roll next.
And I'll wrap what you asked back up into that. So I never thought I was going to be in this position, like I said before. And when I was out in California, it was taking a job offer from Tesla, which was a good job offer, or coming back here and I'm still basically making minimum wage. And it's like, why would you do that? And the answer is because at some point in the future, these things are going to cross, and the company that I'm doing now is going to hopefully net me more money than if I would have taken the job at Tesla. But to your point, like Ryan said, his parents were for it. Mine were not at all. They thought I was crazy for coming back and doing this. And it just, actually yesterday, my dad was up for my birthday and came up and got to see our office, and it was that was the first time he actually saw this as a legitimate thing, because we have some employees now and things like that. And so there is, for me, a very defined leap of faith. It was turning down a really good job to explore something, and my drive is making sure that it's successful so that my family and other people in Mississippi, where this is not very common, see that this is a possibility and that you can do this too.
Well, based on what you said about turning down a job, I have to leapfrog to Ryan and then come back to Roll, because Ryan, this is the Longyear story too, right?
Right. Well, I had quit my job. I was working in industry, and then I'd been saving up all my money, so I just lived pretty frugally in general. And I said, I have enough. I could give this a run. And then between that and being in school here, I don't know if a lot of people know it, but there's grants given by the university, by the Entrepreneurship Center, to support businesses, like no strings attached grants. And that was something that kind of helped support me as I was doing this full time. So I had graduated. I was able to live off of between my savings and the grants that I got. I had relative financial security. So that's kind of how I decided, this is something that I can get into because I've sort of afforded myself the possibility to do it.
Roll.
So mine is actually along the same lines too. I wasn't in a very good place about 2 months ago when I graduated, and being an international student, it's not really easy because I have a whole another set of problems considering the H-1B visa status and all of that kind of jazz. But I actually made a decision, and I was like, if I'm not gonna take this risk right now, I'm not gonna take it ever. Certainly not when I'm 40. And I'm 27. I have nothing to lose. I have only to gain. And I did it, and now we're here. Actually, the most progress that we've made in the past 5 years is the past 2 months. So I haven't sat down for a single second ever since, and these guys will vouch for it. They see me run around everywhere. That was my day today as well.
Surprised it's not on the phone right now.
It's ringing as we speak. So having said that, yeah, well, I turned on a job, and I'm here. I'm doing this because this is what I want to do. My goal is to disrupt the market that I'm in. Money is not really a concern at this point, and once it makes one of the things that I would like to say is everyone thinks everyone wants to be an entrepreneur is because you want to be a millionaire. That's not really true always. Yes, that's in the back of the head, but one thing, a common denominator that you will see with entrepreneurs is that we don't follow after money. We know the money will come. We follow after something, a problem that we want to solve or a passion that we want to go after. And once it's done and once you have solved that, the money will follow. Once you can show or deliver value, people will pay for it. So that's what I'll leave it with.
To sort of piggyback on that, like not being in this just to chase the money. Like for me, it was like, okay, well, this seems like a cool project. This seems like, this is a game that I really want to play. And the money to me is like, okay, well, if I make enough money, then I can make more games. Or I can try something else. Like I could go back into bioengineering and try to do something cool along those lines. But the other thing that kind of came to mind was that I think, well, at least for me, I got into this knowing that I could fail, that likely I would fail, right? And that's something that I think, well, I work in the Entrepreneurship Center part-time, and I see a lot of students, and I'm not sure that it's something that's kind of a common thought is that, like I can fail and this will be okay. Like there's still a lot that will come of this, a lot of connections, a lot of experiences, it's a great resume builder. There's just a lot to it that I think you could get paralyzed or kind of have a mental breakdown or something if you're afraid of failure. This is kind of getting away from what the original question was.
Right. All the three of us, or any entrepreneur that you would speak to, is that we're not scared of failure anymore. We stress over it, that's a different story, but we're not scared of it. We actually embrace failure and rejections, and that's how we've gotten here, right? We can keep going on and on, but we can move to the next
Yeah,
question.
well, no, this is good, and I think what we'll do is near the end of this, give you guys some, a minute or two to just share any thought you want to share. So I'll plant that seed now. You can think about it throughout this. One of the things unique about the three of you, in particular to me, is that this is not day one that you started these three businesses. And in the case of Hagen and Raul, you all have sales. Ryan isn't quite there yet, but he has got the seed capital in the works to make this a reality. So I'm going to start with Hagen and ask, when was it that you all started getting sales traction, and how important is that to you?
Oh, it's extremely important, and you don't really know how big your company is going to be until you start seeing this kind of stuff and can do projections. And this isn't an easy, and sometimes it isn't a fun road. And sometimes you look back and kind of have to see where you came from to appreciate where you are and where you plan on going. We started the company in 2015. It took us a year to do tooling because ours is a hardware product, so there was a lot that went into that. And speaking of failures, I'd never done CAD before, actually designing this stuff, and didn't really have any help, and blew $35,000 on a model that wasn't right before we realized it. And so, that to me was my indication to keep going, because I didn't want to just blow that money and then walk away. So that was kind of what set the trend to keep going. But anyway, we started making sales actually last August, And soon thereafter had someone on social media called Tipsy Bartender that picked up Glow and produced a video, and it has amassed, I think, over 9 million views at this point. And that was kind of our leapfrog moment where we were able to kind of like break through a big barrier at once and reach out to a lot of clients, a lot of those that we still have.
So in those 600,000 units to date, the copy that's being sold today, what iteration is it?
117. It's actually 117. When I was at Tesla, we had gotten some money through what Ryan talked about, a grant through the E-Center. And it wasn't a lot for us at the time. It was huge. I think it was like $500 or $1,000, and we bought a little 3D printer. And every day after work, I was in California, Kaylee was back here, I would practice my CAD skills, and I'd print a model, and we'd try to see if the pieces snapped together and if the electronics fit, and they didn't. I'd redo it and redo it and redo it. And finally, about revision 85 onward, it started to actually work. And I would ship those back to Kaylee, and she would test and talk to a group that she was working with here. And it was revision 115 that cost us $35,000. So it doesn't mean that the whole time you're doing this that it's steadily getting better. There's still flaws that you have to work out.
So last point before I shift over to Raul on this sales question is, out of that whole process and money spent doing it, how much more was that than you thought it was going to be?
What, $35,000?
Yeah, about $35,000 more. No, the whole thing is, every part of it is more expensive than you think. I think you're almost like naive going into this process. I don't know. For me, I thought I ran a bunch of numbers being an engineer and thought how this worked, and you don't account for, ocean tripping, or you don't account for tooling, or you don't account for having to manufacture it a certain way so that water doesn't get inside. All this kind of stuff, it adds up, and you learn a ton along the way, which is the cool part. But yeah, things are always a little bit more expensive than you anticipate, I would say. Yeah.
I don't think a segue is needed here, Raul.
Well, on those lines, I can relate to every single thing that you've said, right? From the start itself, the three of us that started this, none of us were coders. BIS, medical technology, and aerospace engineering. Have no idea about what coding was, but
Not much.
yeah, no, absolutely not. And so we had to contract out initially. We got a prototype of something, it did something, and I'm like, no, it's not gonna work. And then we started in 2012, and 2015 was when we got our investment, our first $100,000. So it was 3 years of just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. People saying, no, this is not gonna work. This is a shitty idea. This is whatever. This is, and we are like, no, we have a vision. It's just that we can't convey it. We don't have the means for it. We're just gonna keep going. And then we did get the $100,000, and we blew $45,000 on the wrong company. And that leaves us with 55. I'm like, oh my God. And so now we have offices in 2 different continents, one in India and one here, and we have 2 different markets as well. And our entire development team, we needed an in-house development team. So we have 9 full-time employees working day in, day out on this in India, but we have the sales and business side over here as well. We have a few people with coding experience, but the point is, it took us 4.5 years and 45,000, more than 45, with the grants that we got from the E-Center, everything, we blew on all of this. But one thing that we learned was we were getting closer and closer and closer and closer to what we want our product to look like and our technology to look like. And now we've created something, and we're very close to that perfect product. And the iterations that he said, we started from version 1.0, and it's 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, till a month and a half ago, we started our sales 2 months ago, and we've done $125,000 in sales in the past 2 months, both here and India. But in the past 1.5 months, we've gone from version 1.5 to 2.8. That's like every third day, fourth day, we're, pumping in features and fixing the bugs and fixing the glitches. And, thanks to all the professors, we have around 40 faculty members in Mississippi State, which I had no idea about. So I just found that out, and thanks to all of them, because we've started something called as a feedback loop within our within Campus Knot itself, where all the professors are there, and whenever there's something wrong, they immediately post it on there with the screenshot or something, and we have our developers on there as well. So it's an immediate, okay, this is the problem, we fix it, we take care of it, here's the screenshot, it's done, taken care of, right?
So we're going to get Ryan back in this conversation in a moment, but I want to just ask the question, and this is somewhat off the grid here, but this group of three gentlemen are three of the smartest individuals that I've ever met in terms of engineering minds, and either that says something about my networking ability, or it tells you how bright these guys are. So I have to ask the question of, we're talking about essentially $35,000 of mistakes and then $45,000 of mistakes. Feel free, either of you, to take it, but how does that happen?
Well, it happens when you don't know what you're doing. It is hard sometimes. Imagine being put in the middle of an ocean with maybe a life vest. I mean, you've never done any of this before. You've never dealt with financing. You've never dealt with manufacturing. You've never dealt with coding. You've never dealt with people skills and management and whatever it is. And so here I am on Alibaba trying to source not only a plastic part, but it has electronics inside and it has to be sealed in a certain way. And you're trying to convey that to someone in another place that you don't really know a whole lot about at the time. And that's how it happens. You're trying to get something out and something that's good and something people want, and you have this kind of internal clock ticking of oh, we've gotten this money, we need to execute and get something out there, and then that's how you, I guess, learn in a way. So
absolutely right. I mean, the amount of mistakes that we've made is insane. That's what we were talking about. Ryan actually asked me, so what if he asks us, what is the biggest mistake that we've made? I'm like, I don't know. I just made one this morning. So I can keep going. We all of us can keep going, but it's all about making those mistakes, learning, and not making it again. And that's what makes it interesting, because you are better off than where you were yesterday. And every day is a challenge. Every second is a challenge, right? And that's in a way adrenaline rush for us, where we it never stops, to the point where we have to start taking care of our health, right?
That's important.
I know. I've started meditating, if that tells you anything. But having said that, it's all about making mistakes. Entrepreneurship is about making mistakes. You're not an entrepreneur if you haven't made mistakes, if you haven't failed, if you're not comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty, right?
And real quick before we move on, so lots of failures, they happen every day. There's stress every day. But the other side of this is, and this is something I really have to do, is sit down and look at the little things. There's been so many cool sales that we've had. There's a autistic child that we just donate cubes to every month because he hates taking a bath, and his mom throws these little glow light up cubes in his tub and he'll get in the tub. And so things like that, you really have to sit down and kind of look at things and see, like I said, where you've been and how you've gotten there, because there is stress every day. But sometimes you kind of have to acknowledge what you've done so that it doesn't completely wear you down.
So we're going to drag Ryan back in here, and I'm going to bring up a conversation we had a while back ago when he was in the trenches building this product. And we would meet at 929 Coffee, and he would give me an update on how the product development was going. And I remember one time we were having a conversation, and he was over the moon excited because he had the man in the game could actually like hit a brick or something. Yeah, attack. So you want to talk about how this went down? You taught yourself how to do this, right?
Yeah, well, similar to the two of these guys, is that when I got into this, I was doing AutoCAD work at a steel rebar company. It's not quite in bioengineering, but I was doing engineering work, which I was happy about. But I said, all right, if I'm going to do this, what are the skills I need? Well, I don't know really anything about programming. I knew a little bit, but not anything on this level. I don't know how to create 3D character models. I don't know how to animate on a technical or a theoretical level. I don't know about, there's a million things that I didn't know how to do, but I said, you know what, like, I'll buy myself a year, I'll go to school, I'll figure it out. And then, kind of like Raul said, you just every day you say, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try. I'm going to fail. But I'm going to get a little bit further. It's like that continual progress every day, every day. And so, and with my project, and with all of these really, but with my project, I remember I sat down and I said, all right, I finally, what are the big milestones I'm going to hit? Well, I made my first character. I made a 3D character model. Okay, and now he can move. Okay, and now I've done one animation, and he's standing still in this animation, which how hard is that, right? How hard, he's got a hammer. He's like, how hard is it to make a man just stand still? And it took me 10 tries. But, and then it's like, all right, well, now I've got 100 animations. Okay, good. So what's next? Now I've got a program. He's got to be able to move. He's got to be able to make those animations show up and play properly in the game. He's got to have all the, so I just laid it out and just one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. So you can only do one thing at a time, right? And for me, it was like, in a way it's daunting, right? Because I had this huge list of animations, features, whatever, of everything that I knew I was going to have to get done. But then, and so that's daunting, you look at it. But then if you say, all right, well, I can only do one of these, but I know every day that I wake up and I sit down at my computer, this is it. Like, it's just this one thing that I have to do, or at least try, I may not get there, but just one thing at a time. And then a month goes by, 2 months, 3 months, it's like, oh, wow, I'm actually halfway through this list now. And it was, like March, I think. March, I got through the whole list. It's all done. All I need are artists and animators. And then it'll be released on Steam for anyone that plays video games.
To keep it short, but to add on to that, yeah, guys, stop trying to connect the dots in the future. It's not going to happen, okay? You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so stop trying to do that. When you get there, all of us, we can look back and we can tell you exactly what happened because of what this led to that led to this. That's how we're here. Yeah. But even today, if someone was to ask me, or someone was to ask the entire team, all of us, that, how did you guys get here? We don't really know, quite honestly. We really don't. And this is not something that we're making up. It's not like this was all planned, right? But one thing we can tell you is that we kept going and we kept doing. We didn't know, that's fine, we can learn. There are resources, there are people to help, there's the e-center. I mean, just come in there, it's beautiful, right? You walk in there and you feel like, oh, this place makes me feel like do something, right? And having said that, yeah, just stop worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, because we've all spent a lot of time doing that, and I'm telling you from experience, from all the three of us, it's not going to get you anywhere. You're just going to waste your time.
It sort of reminds me as well that, one of the things that I really loved about this whole process, and I continue to love every day, is that it's like every day you're faced with a problem you have no idea how to solve because you've never seen anything like it. You don't even know where to start for figuring this out. And by the end of the day, you've either made progress, you've solved it, you found a new problem you have no idea what to do about. But if that sounds appealing at all, then this is a great time in your life to kind of give it a shot,
So it's interesting you bring.
We got a question over here.
I was going to say, when you get a chance to get out about y'all ideas,
I'll answer that in a very short way. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because I've had so many people, all of us have had so many people who just come and like, oh, what about IP? What about patenting it? Like, make people sign non-disclosure agreements for an idea. Can we please stop doing that? Because I've had people come to me with that, and I'm like, I don't want to hear your idea.
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between an idea and a design.
Right.
You protect a design, but an idea is worthless. Like, I hate to put it like that, but there's no such thing as $1 million idea.
That is true.
You know?
So we have, yeah. So, I mean, I guess this goes for software too, but for hardware, especially with something that's, low cost like Glow, we have one patent that's been granted, and then we have another one in the works, and it's called a provisional. And then we also have trademarked Glow, so if anyone uses that in the same space we're in, it's all very cumbersome. So you do all of that, right? And you hope that people out there respect that, and like big companies will. Big companies that don't want you using their trademark will do the same for you. But smaller people, sketchy people, and the people that you want to stay away from, they don't care. If they think that you're making money, they'll purchase Google AdWords that say Glow, we have Glow Cubes. They'll say Glow Drinks or Glow whatever, and try to skirt around that. And then you can either at that point spend thousands of dollars trying to find these people and really protect it, or what's next on your agenda, where you're going next, you just keep going that way. And yeah, if it gets that big enough that like it's impacting sales to some extent, maybe you go after them, but most of the time, it's just not worth it.
So I want to go back down this path of, ideas aren't worth $1 million. So the unique thing about this group of people here is that all of you have had some experience raising capital, this kind of magic thing in entrepreneurship. So it feels like there's a gap between I have an idea for a business and that moment. So I'd like all three of you to speak on this and talk us through what happens between that. So,
yeah.
If you want to start.
Sure, we'll just go down, I guess. So for us, it's kind of crazy. So we were accepted into a summer incubator, and this was actually going on while I was at Tesla. Kaylee was here going through this incubator thing. That's why I would ship product back, is because she would have like weekly reviews, and we would show what we had done on the hardware side, and she'd work on the business side. Well, at the end of this, I came back and had like 2 more weeks in the incubator, and then we had to put together a presentation. And actually at that presentation is where we met all 3 of our investors. They were all state alums and all kind of like just chill guys that have made a lot of money doing, one thing or another. But the thing is, they had to see that ambition and that tenacity and that drive and that you're really going to take this somewhere, because no one wants to invest in you if you're not going to like break your back to get their money back at some point. And like I said, these might be like good old boys from Mississippi, but at the end of the day, this wasn't just like, hey, here's 80 grand or whatever it happens to be, go do with what you want to. And so sometimes you make decisions because you're kind of like forced to, but at the end of the day, those decisions are the crucial ones that kind of like make your next path, I guess.
Yeah. Something that I think surprises a lot of people, it definitely surprised me, is that investors, when they're talking to anyone that they would possibly invest in, they're always looking for a return, right? And that's obvious. They're there to make money. But the amount of money that they're looking to make is 10 times what they put in. So if somebody gets an investment of $1 million, the investor says, well, in the next 5, 10 years, however long, I expect to have $10 million for this if everything goes well. And that sounds greedy, right? That sounds like, what? That's crazy. Why would I take this? But from their perspective, 1 in 10 fail. 1 in 10 funded companies fail, right? You got weeded out, like you made it all the way to getting invested in. You still only have a 1 in 10 chance to succeed. And so that's why they're looking for 10 times return. The other thing to kind of closer answer your question is, I talked to a lot of students who have started out very early in the whole process, and the insight that I can give them is that Investors are really only interested in two questions. The first one is how much money's on the table. So are we talking in 5 years, your company, if everything goes well, all the stars align, you break your back doing all this work, are we talking we're splitting up $1 million, we're splitting up $10 million, 100 million, billion, like how much money is on the table? Then the second question is, do I believe it? Do I believe that you're going to be able to do this, that together we can make this a reality, that we'll even come close to the $10 million that you said? And so there's a lot of questions that go into that, but it all really boils down to, do I believe you? Are you passionate about this? Is this something you're going to do, whether you do it with me, whether you do it with somebody else, whether you have to go out and work for 5 years, 10 years, and raise your own capital just by working? How well do you know the market? Do you have a product? Like, all of these things just boil down into, do I believe you, right? And so that's where it's kind of nice knowing that ahead of time. I didn't really know that until I got to the point where it's like, all right, time to pitch. But if you know that ahead of time, then that's your goal, right? You can save some time saying like, well, if this isn't contributing to a believable pitch and a believable product and a believable future, then it's probably not, I don't know, I don't want to say it's not worth doing, but it's from the perspective of getting the investment, it's kind of not worth doing.
So, tying back in with what these guys are saying, my experience has been a little different, and I agree with those two questions that he sent. But one thing you need to remember is that whole investor raising capital process, whenever you go in front of an investor, 75% of what they judge on is based on the team and based on you. Are you the person, right? They bet on the jockey more than the horse itself. They want to see that the horse has the potential to win races, and yes, that's an absolutely, that makes sense, that's logical, right? But more than that, is the jockey capable to make it happen, right? Because now you're just dealing with, you're showing a prototype, you're showing potential, you're showing a problem, and then you're showing a solution. And you're saying that people are going to pay for this solution, right? There is no really hard evidence, unless, yes, you've ran some, beta tests and have testimonials and have people react to it, spend a lot of time doing research and development. But most of it, if you are the right person and if you can develop yourself into someone who these investors can believe in and say that you're the person to make this happen, most of your job is done, right? Then you just need to focus on the product and the minimal viable product or a prototype or whatever it is that you have. And then, of course, you have your market size. Scalability is a very, very, very important thing for investors, all right? No matter what you do, no matter what business you try to get into, please do not, you start off with a small place, you start off with a small region, you start off with a small set of users, but it always needs to be scalable. So, for example, all the three of us is worldwide scalable. Now, global is what attracts, right? Starkville, not so much, but there are businesses, successful small businesses like that as well. It's not wrong, but if you're going for big money and asking for a lot, it needs to be scalable. So having said that, real quick, 2015, well, we were desperately looking for funding. It's been 3 years for us. Nothing showing up. We pitched to the ECAB, E-Center a lot of times, got a bunch of grants, and we survived somehow, all of us. I had 5 jobs when I was in undergrad. That's also because I messed up in my first year and lost scholarship and stuff. But the point is, all of us had all sorts of other kind of odd jobs where we used to earn that money and we used to support Campus Knot, especially your founder, Hiten Patel. But so we survived somehow, and in 2015, we were making some noise in the sense, you know, we had some social media presence, we had some people testing us out, we have some kind of pilot users, and turns out that, you know, we got an investor within our connection, distant network, but he believed in us, and he was like, and he told us this, that I'm investing in you guys. I don't really know exactly what the product is going to look like, but I'm investing in you and your vision, because you guys seem like you guys are not going to stop, right? So having said that, he put in $100,000. Then, of course, after the big mistake that we made, we needed more, and he's put in 100 more, and now we're to a point where we have enough user base and enough activity and enough potential and enough sales to go for $1 million round to professional venture capitalists. Now, do you want to do that? Do you not? That's up to you. I was in New York, and I got a firsthand information on what these VCs think and what they look for and what they want, essentially. And this is what they said. And these are like top ed tech investors, like they've invested in Blackboard, Canvas, multi-billion-dollar companies. And here's what they said: if you can survive without us, if you don't need us, you're better off, because it's a one-way marriage contract that you're getting into. They can divorce you, you will not be able to divorce them, I'll tell you that. So it's a long thought process, but there are pros to it. I'm not making it sound like there are only cons. Yes, you want to go do it because it's going to propel you like you can't imagine, right?
So that's a great question.
So,
why take on investment dollars, period?
Well, it's the time component, for me at least. It's like, I'm in a position where I've got a prototype, and I could likely, you know, I could work another year, and I could raise enough money on my own that I could, you know, I could find a cheap artist that really believes in the project and, you know, all of that. But for me, it's like, all right, well, if I look 5 years from now, and I've got investors, or I say, forget it, I'll just do it all on my own. In 5 years, taking an investment, even though it's very costly, right? If I give up 25% of the company, it's like, oh man, that's a lot. That's a lot to give up. But in 5 years, it's like, well, I've got a whole year head start. You know, in 5 years, I'm hitting that exponential return that, or you know, it's a huge return if you know things go well. But if I have to wait a whole extra year, then well, first, I may not do it. There's more risk over time. But then the second is that, you know, even if things go exactly as well in a year, it's like in 5 years, I'm looking at way less money. That's a whole extra year that I'm not making games. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, so hardware is a little different because there's a lot of upfront costs. The other thing is, and this is just personal, there's a lot of people that can make this work, but I'm not one of them, is starting a startup on the side. Like, I just think if you have a full-time job where you're making whatever dollar amount that you're comfortable living on, you're not gonna come home and spend the rest of your night working on something else. Like, you know, that's just not how it works. And so up front, we realized that. And I was like, I have an offer on the table. So unless we get investors and I can like make a living off of this, I'm taking the offer. And so for us, that was the reason that we raised money. Also, because we couldn't afford tooling costs if we hadn't. You know, software is a little different, not knocking it, but sometimes you can, you know, it's easier to code than it is to machine something sometimes. Unless you make mistakes like
no, well, there's one way to go about it, is that you have a coder on the team, on the founding team itself, then you don't have to worry. But I'm telling you, the kind of things that we want to do, not one person can make it, and a student with a certain amount of knowledge, not saying that they can't learn, but at the pace that we want to go to, at the scale that we are operating, we are going to need an in-house team. And that's why we needed that money desperately, because if we did not get that, then we would have died. And the reason where we are right now is because of that, quite honestly.
So I want to load a question up for you, and hopefully you'll think about something personal that will resonate. But in here we have 100-some students, and in the Entrepreneurship Center we deal with 250 plus a year that walk in, and many of those, actually all of those, including this room, have ideas, and they're probably sitting here thinking, I just don't know if this is me, right? So, and it can be lonely as an entrepreneur, because nobody can quite understand your problems that you're dealing with that day better than you, and there's no one you can really dump that on. So if you would kind of take both of those angles and share, what are your thoughts on that? Hagen, you want to start?
Yeah, so it can be lonely sometimes, and all of us are based out of Starkville, and a lot of people, myself included, the plan was to get a degree and then you move away. That's what 99% of people do. And so being here, yes, we've had amazing connections through the E-Center, and even the community has come to help. But what was the other part of that you asked?
We got some parkour.
Yeah, just people sitting here wondering, is this for me?
Yeah, so was it for me at the time? Did I know that it was for me? No, I didn't. I had no idea. Even accompanying Kaylee to the first pitch when we first met Eric, I was like, this isn't for me. We'll go show off this idea. This is dumb. These little things light up when you put them in a drink. And here we are 2 years later, and this is, what feeds me every night. So, but no, I mean, and the thing is that initial vision was Kaylee's, and Kaylee was the one who came and took that initial initiative to come and meet and vet that idea. And the initial idea was a little dumb. You pulled a string on a T-tab and it would light up, and so it wasn't liquid activated and all this other kind of stuff. But the core concept was there, and if you really push through barriers and you listen to people and you pivot and you kind of through all of that, it's like hammering down a rock and there's a diamond inside or something. You're trying to perfect this rough idea that you have. And a lot of what I see, and I hope this never becomes the case for me, because I think this is how Kaylee and I got to where we are, is you have to be able to listen to people. You have to be able to listen to your customers. We help with an advisory board here on campus, and we have a lot of students come in sometimes, and they take offense if we're trying to give them advice sometimes. And I'll tell you right now, if we hadn't taken some of the advice that was given, now it's up to you to sort that advice. But if people were there and willing to give their time to you, to tell you how you can make your product better, you better believe I'm going to listen to it, And I think that's a really important trait, is your idea could be great if you pivot a little, if you change this or that. But I don't think that there's a definition for an entrepreneur or someone that owns a startup or wants to do this.
Yeah, I kind of consider myself an atypical entrepreneur. When I thought of people who start businesses, I'm like, these guys are staying up all night, working tirelessly, basically killing themselves to do this. And I said, if I'm going to do this, this is a marathon and not a sprint. And I'm also, coming from engineering, where I did not, I did not think oh yeah, it's great. I'll just go stand up in front of people and talk for a lot of my days. That's what I'll do. No, I do math. That's what I do. Work on computers. But I guess to answer the question of, I think more people could get into this than they probably would imagine. And the nice thing about being in the position that you guys are in right now is that there's money on the table at the E-Center. You can go and pitch your idea and get great feedback. You can get investments from the E-Center that cost nothing to you. So you can give it a shot and see, is this something that I think I'm gravitating towards, or is this something that it was cool, but I don't know, maybe I'm not committed to this. Or the other thing about the question, the way that you had put it, was there's a lot of viable ideas in a lot of different areas. The example that I really like is over the summer I met this guy, Oliver. He's a student here, and he had started a landscaping business. And he was talking to me about it, and he was like, in high school I was doing this because I was like, I could probably do this. And then he said, well, all right, if I sit down and I do the math, and I can get 4 lawns done a day, and I get, let's say, $100 for each lawn. It's like, all right, well, that's $400 in a day. Do that, 5 days a week. If I could do this full time, then we're quickly getting close to 6 figures. He said, all right, well, what if I had better equipment and I could do this even better? Anyway, long story short, he came to college here. He's been working with the East Center. He's got $1 million contract lined up to be the landscaping service for like this big company. And the point is not like, oh, wow, there's a lot of money in landscaping. The point is that if you have an idea that you're not crazy about that area, you can find an idea in a place that you love or passionate about. For me, it was video games. I didn't really think I was going to do video games until I sort of said, let me give it a shot. Let me see if there's actually a market for this where I could come in.
So tying into that, the space that I'm in, education technology, is the worst space you can be in. It literally is the worst space to be in because it's so hard to sell. But if I had the option to go back and change it, yes, I would, but can't do that now. But what I'm saying is, from the very start, first things first, you will know it, right? If you want to do it, from the very beginning, it'll hit you so hard, you're like, okay, I want to do this. And there'll be, everyone around you is going to think, what in the world is this guy doing, or this girl doing, It's not gonna work. They're not gonna do anything. I'll tell you this, no one 5 years back thought I'll be sitting here. Well, fair enough. I didn't think I would be sitting here. So that's all right. And you're going to be lonely. People are gonna question you. One thing that Eric always says is this is the most persistent bunch of entrepreneurs that they've seen. I'm like, that's not true. But from the very get-go, whenever we used to pitch to the ECAB, so our initial idea was to connect 2 students in a classroom with each other without you guys knowing each other, which means you can help each other anytime you want, all right? And you don't need to exchange numbers, you don't need to do anything. We are still doing that, right? But we have pivoted so much. Now there is a professor in the game, now there is like other kind of features, because we figured out that, students don't really want to initiate, but that we figured out by making a mistake, which is we got our minimum viable product and put it out there, and we had like 400 signups. But the point is there was 0 activity. So now we're going to need an initiator, which is why we're going to have to bring a faculty. Now we're going to have to design an entire CVP or value proposition for a faculty member, which means that's that much more coding and spending time on the whiteboard as to what features would they like and not. So my point is that if you don't pivot, you're not really doing something. You will never end up with the same, the core will be there, but you will pivot a lot along the way. So.
All right, so we're gonna move over to the student questions.
All right.
And we're gonna have just one of you answer these at a time here because we got a lot. So I think Raul, we'll start this one with you. The question from the student is, how do you, and they vote these up, so I'm asking near the top, how do you become a student entrepreneur if you don't have daddy's money to pay rent?
You have 5 jobs. You get 5 jobs. So I had to take care of a bunch of, a good bit. So my parents only could afford a little bit of the tuition because the rest I had scholarship. Well, I was busy living a good life or a college life in my freshman year, and I lost it. And now I have to come up with that surplus. So I took up 5 jobs, I also have to take care of my rent. Of course, my parents helped me out a little bit here and there wherever they could. So all throughout, I've had like multiple jobs, 5, 6 jobs at going at the same time. So for the past 7 years, my life has been, well, in the past 7 years is when I went from a boy to a man, quite honestly. That's where my transition came, and that's where I've learned everything. Because you will not recognize me if you would have met me 5 years or 7 years back. But go ahead.
I'll be completely real with y'all. So not having daddy's money, but my dad worked in construction his whole life and kind of taught me the value of hard work. My parents divorced when I was in high school. My dad took most of everything. My mom still lives in Columbus, doesn't have, has worked very hard for herself, but I never got money from my parents. Actually, for the past year, I've been helping my mom pay her house payment. So it's one of those things that, and this is something that drives me, and I'm getting like emotional, but it's one of those things that you have family and you have people that are close to you that need help. And this is one of the reasons that I do this. It's because we recognize that. There's a lady that works for us that is actually my mom's neighbor, and she worked in industry all of her life and fell and broke her hip, and she's like 67 and can't find a job. Well, we hire her a few days a week to come up and do packaging for us, to do little things like that. And I say all that to say you don't have to have daddy's money to do that. You do have to have the e-center, and that's where you get. But that is, there is money out there, and there are people in the state of Mississippi that want to help you. Because what they're seeing in you is that if they help you, you turn back around and you help this state and you help other people in it. And so I think that's a really good question. And it's not everyone that you see up here. I would say all of us haven't really had help from our parents. So.
And I would like to spend a little more time on this question because it's very important, all right? Put this thing in your head. The world doesn't owe you anything. You don't owe the world anything. And there are no handouts in life, all right? So you gotta earn every single thing. And yes, it's going to be difficult. And yes, it's going to be lonely. It's going to be sad. It's going to be whatever you want to call it. The point is, do you want to do it? Because at the end, it's going to be worth it. Now, the worth, you want to term it in terms of dollars. Yes, you want to term it, you want to, think about it in aspects of I've done something, I've changed something, I have disrupted something. Yes, that's possible, but it's possible. There are resources. You just need to be driven. You just need to be at the right place at the right time and grab that opportunity, right? Opportunity doesn't come knocking on your door. People say that a lot. You put yourself there. So put yourself out there and put yourself in the e-center.
That was a good question.
Yeah, whoever asked the daddy's rent question might get bonus points here. Got everybody wound up. So I'll start this one with Ryan. It's kind of teed up because this is currently your job. But
good.
What's the biggest mistake and misunderstanding you see new entrepreneurs make?
I think it has to be that they're waiting for permission to go out and try stuff and do stuff. Like every one of us said, I don't know how to do this. I don't know, let me give it a shot. There's too many times where I've had a student walk in and let's say I connect them to a professor and I say, all right, great, here's the connection made, or like, here's the people that you need to talk to, the things that you need to do. Go talk to these managers of these stores so that you get a picture of this. Then I'll get an email 2 weeks later saying like, hey, when would be a good time to do that? Like, now? Now would be a great time to do that. So I'd say, yeah, just like move, Eric says it a lot, move fast and break things. That is the way to be as an entrepreneur.
Anything to add?
I'll add to that.
Go for it.
All right, Raul, you get 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Well, stop making excuses. I have school, I have homework, I have this, I have that. Yes, we all have that. Go ahead and do it, even if you have it. And second, don't start off with monetization. Don't start off with revenue, and don't start off with all of that. Have a loose idea of how you're gonna make it, but focus on the core that matters. All of that will fall in place.
Solving the problem.
Solving the problem, focus on that.
So I've got a question that's teed up really for you, Hagen, although Raul, you have business partners too, but do you think it's necessary to partner with somebody on a business venture? And really, I'm going to add on, how does that help you or hurt you?
Okay. So, how real do I want to be on this question? So my partner and I, we're very close. We were really good friends. We had no idea of working experience or anything like that together. But we complemented each other. I wouldn't have a partner that was a clone of me. For example, like Ryan's a great guy and I love him to death, but us as partners doesn't make sense because our minds both concentrate in the same way. But Kaylee, being graphic design, took over design and marketing while I'm focusing on engineering and like logistics. And I think you have to have people like that at some point to help fill in the part of the pie. So I don't think that I would be here. I wouldn't be here without Kaylee. It was her idea and she took the initiative to come to the E-Center. But sometimes a lot of people just look for a partner just to have one. And I don't think if you have the right person, I think you're even more set up to fail. Because if it's not the right person, if it's your best friend sometimes and you are very like-minded, you are going to get in spats real quick about things.
As somebody who I did not have a business partner, like you can do it alone, but as somebody who had to do it alone, I will tell you that don't do that. Get a business partner, like find the right person. But I've heard it said before by venture capitalists that they don't see anyone that doesn't have a team. They won't talk to somebody that has no team, because what it communicates to them is that you couldn't convince a single person to be part of your team, to believe in your idea.
Right.
And I say that as somebody who's looking like he's going to get invested as a solo person, but so I guess there are exceptions, but I think it's good coming from me that I'm telling you, don't go down that road, because you'll motivate each other, you'll complement each other, you'll have somebody to kind of pull you up in terms of if you're slumping in a day, or you can pull them up. It's you're way more likely to succeed.
Actually, tying into that, it's very important. Any given entrepreneur will, throughout the journey, will question the idea and question the whole process and question why in the world I'm doing this in the first place, and that is very common. And that's when, so we, the three of us and all of us have thought this, but at any given point, if the two of us thought this, one still held the ground. And that's how we're like, no, we're gonna do this. So at no point in time, like all the three of us gave up. The odds of that is fairly low. And that's how we've come where we are. I had a call with one of them yesterday, and he was questioning at this point. And I was like, hey, dude,
We're doing it.
we're doing it. There's no looking back, so chill.
Well, so we have 3 minutes left, which means you're restricted to 60 seconds each. So I just want to give you all a moment to share whatever you think is important to share given the context of what we talked about. And we'll start with you, Hagen.
Dang, I wasn't thinking about that when you told
Well,
me earlier.
I can jump
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, find a mentor. The Entrepreneurship Center is the best place to find a mentor, because we've just got too many mentors. We're giving them away for free. And then also just go into the E-Center in general to find out kind of what the resources are and how you can get a hold of those, so that you can give entrepreneurship a shot. It's never going to be a better time, I don't think, for you to do it. It's free money for you, if you are willing to go after it. So that's my advice.
Well, 5 very important things in a startup. Idea, business model, team and execution, funding, and and timing, right? The top 2 is timing being the first, and team and execution being the second, and funding being the last. Okay? Always keep that in mind. Just do it, guys. I'm gonna leave you with that. Just do it.
Yeah, if you're thinking about it, at least go take the first step. if I hadn't had someone to drag me along for step one, I wouldn't be here. But I'm so thankful for that person and for Eric and the East Center for doing that. And so if you don't have that person, but you still have an idea, go. That's what all of us are here for. We enjoy this kind of stuff, and that's what the East Center is built for. So go do it. Take some initiative. Just get an idea off the ground and see where it goes. If it's something you want to pursue it. And if not, you can always walk away.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, thank you all very much for joining us. Great comments.